Welcome to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. I'm your host, Kendra Rinaldi. This is a space to explore the full spectrum of grief, from the kind that comes with death to the kind that shows up in life's many transitions. Through stories and conversations, we remind each other that we're not alone. Your journey matters, and here we're figuring it out together. Let's dive right in to today's episode. Let's start with a quick disclaimer. This podcast includes personal stories and perspectives on topics like grief, health, and mental wellness. The views expressed by guests are their own and may reflect individual experiences that are not meant as medical advice. As the host, I hold space for diverse voices, but that does not mean I endorse every viewpoint shared. Please listen with care and take what resonates with you. Today's guest is Andy Campbell. He is a survivor, an author, and a beacon of resilience. He has survived childhood trauma, family loss, cancer, and the unimaginable grief of losing a child to suicide. And we will be talking a lot today, particularly about his book, Overcoming Life's Toughest Setbacks. And we can see how these life experiences definitely led you to writing this book. But I am just really curious to get to meet you. So welcome, Andy.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
I am too. And so I normally start just getting to know the guests. So tell me, where did you grow up and where do you live now?
Well, I was born in South Alabama into a what I think would be considered a relatively poor family, farmers, and my parents decided that was not the lifestyle they wanted, so they worked hard to get out of that, and that meant I grew up a lot on my own. They both worked a lot, and my father traveled a tremendous amount. And I think, when you grow up a lot on your own, it's both an opportunity for adventure and learning, and it's also an opportunity for, things to not go as well as they could have, had adults been around. And so I experienced, a lot of both. So then, you progress, you survive. I lost my mother when she was diagnosed. She was very young. She was diagnosed at 43. All four of her sisters, let's see, there were 5 children, 4 sisters, 3 died before they were out of their 50s from breast cancer. The 4th one was diagnosed, had a double mastectomy, and did live longer. And so I always kind of thought that I would have cancer. I don't know why, but it was just one of those things in my mind. It's like, I know enough about genetics to know this is probably not normal to have. And then my mother's mother died from breast cancer, so it's like, it's like there seems to be a trend going on here. And so I watched her struggle with cancer over 11 years. She had all the ups and downs. She got to remission twice, but before they said you were in remission on her 5th year anniversary twice, the cancer was found again. And then the second time she lived about a year after that. So I watched someone who struggled with grace and dignity, and they had meaning in their life. And she showed me how to live by watching her struggle against death, if that makes any sense, right? You see characteristics that they're not easily replicable, but they're aspirational. So she was aspirational to me. Got married, had 4 children, never really dealt with any of the stuff that happened to me as a child, or the things that happened to me growing up. And, along the way, I was 53 years old. My mother was diagnosed at 42. She died at 53. And for some reason, I had it in my mind that at 53, I would die. and I don't know why that was. It's just, but it wasn't like I was putting it out into the universe. It wasn't like I was believing it or visualizing in some way that I was expecting to. It was just this nagging thing in the back of my head that 53 was going to be a turning point, and it was. In August of the year I turned 53, I just turned 53 about a month before. I was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and while I was in treatment, 2 years after that, almost 3 years, but not quite 3 years after that, my youngest son took his own life, and so it's been a roller coaster,
Whoa.
mostly a good life, but there have been some, you know, the challenges have been significant.
Yes. Wow. That is a lot. And right before we started recording, I was just like, wait, Andy, I need to understand this because I was just sharing with Andy for the listeners that my mom died of pancreatic cancer. And when she got her diagnosis, we were just kind of like, oh, well, like it was almost a given that it was not survivable almost. So it's very rare. Did your doctor say about what percentage of people usually do survive that to stage 4 pancreatic cancer? Like, were they just in shock?
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I would say I'm an anomaly,
Yeah.
but I think, and one of the parts of my website I discuss this. I have become a firm believer that there are two types of professionals in every profession, and
Mm-hmm.
what distinguishes them is their level of insatiable curiosity. Right, like they cannot get enough information. They believe little of what they see or read, and they just constantly they are very
Remain
competitive,
curious. Yeah, that's just to remain
but they
curious.
never
And
stop learning, right?
yeah.
I had and so when it comes to the medical profession, I see that in my view is there are physicians and then there are doctors. There's way too many doctors and way too few physicians. So the doctors I went to gave me stats like, Andy, um, we'll throw at it what we can, but this is a really dire diagnosis, and so we're not telling you right now that you need to, but you should plan. You should plan. This is this difficult diagnosis, and to make it, I think at that point to make it 3 years was like 5%. Total population was like 5%. Make it 5 years was like 3% or 1%, something like that. 5 years survivability. Then I had my physician, who I'm still very close to today, and he said, "Look, I think with your family history, I think you have a genetic mutation. There's a lot of things that have come around in the last 5 years. At that time, 5 years before." And he said, "You're going to hear a lot about statistics, but let's run back through the statistics. Everything you hear about your opportunity, your survival rate for this diagnosis, is all historical. It's all based on history, and it's a total population. First, things have come forward. So we have different insights now that we didn't have over the lifespan of that population's statistical total." He said, secondly, the way statistics work is you as an individual have a 50-50 shot. You make it or you don't. So you don't have a 3% chance to make it 5 years. You have a 50% chance to make it 5 years. And so I got a plan. And if you want to kind of join with me, I'll join with you, and let's go execute a plan, and we'll take it a week at a time. And our first goal is make it 6 months. We make it 6 months, we'll look at what we got to do to make it a year. We get to a year, we'll look at 3 years. We get to 3 years, look at 5 years. Get to 5 years, we'll make, because we'll just take this thing in
Bite-sized pieces.
bite-sized
Bite-sized
pieces.
pieces. Yes.
And so he set me up on a protocol. I did everything that he told me to do, everything suggested, and it was a lot. I still do a lot.
A lot of changes in your nutrition, and a lot of changes in your lifestyle. Did he include all
Everything.
that? Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Because
yeah.
that was one of the things that really shocked me and still does, that a lot of times when you go to the hospital. Let's say you're hospitalized, even just eating the hospital food, and you're kind of
Oh, it's
like,
terrible.
what? Right?
Yeah, it's
How are
bad
they
for you.
giving me this if I just had this procedure? Like, or
Yeah,
how for my mom, they were like, yeah, she before she had what is it called, a stent, and
yeah,
they needed her to gain some weight in order, if by chance she could have a Whipple, and they're like, make sure she gains some weight, have her the nurse was like, make sure she eats ice cream, something that's gonna, and
yeah.
I'm like, ice cream, like, I have her whatever she wants to eat, just have her eat. We just the focus. So it's just very mind boggling. So what kind of things did he shift? And we're going to, of course, this conversation,
Yeah,
by the way, for the listeners,
yeah.
is going to go into a lot of other topics too. So, but what
Yeah.
kind of things did he make you shift in your lifestyle that you still hold on to today?
Well, I would say, like I said, you got to have a physician, and then the physician needs to have a patient that wants to stay alive, and that is willing to do some things that might seem a little odd or out there. Okay, so one of the first things that came to me, he said, "Look, he's always got something. The first thing was like some types of mushrooms, and then it was like we need to, there's a lot of data on things like curcumin, turmeric, and
Anti-inflammatory. Yeah.
anti-inflammatory,
Yeah.
directly,
Mhm.
related to human studies.
Yeah.
Berberine, using quercetin in conjunction with zinc. I take probably 40 supplements a day, on label, off label medications plus supplements. I take probably 40 different capsules and pills and powders a day. Um, but what we jointly developed, what eventually kind of came out of all our discussions around this was, and by the way, when I was first diagnosed, I was a puddle of tears. I mean, I'm 53 years old. I've got 4 children. I've got a wife. I'm the sole provider financially. My wife stayed home and took care of all the children. I had decent life insurance, but this is not, at 53, this is not what you're planning for. And I mean, I fell apart, and it took a few days, and then we got back together, and he's like, okay, if you're ready, we need to start, right? We need to start figuring this out. And so what eventually formed up out of those conversations was a 3-pronged strategy. One, we would focus on my energy, because you got to have energy to stay in the struggle, right? And that would be mental energy, spiritual energy, emotional energy, physical energy. So it was finding, down to examining and finding the correct mixture for vitamin B12, not just any B12, but which one did I respond to, and so we would look at all these things. So I did. He called me one day and he goes, I know this is going to kind of be out there, but there's a lot of studies now that show guided imagery will help you get through the chemotherapy. They read off all that. You can look it up there, but doing guided imagery helps a lot with convincing your mind to do things, like to tell
Yeah.
your body to
Shifting
do
it.
things to
Yeah.
flush toxins. So I did guided imagery every week, specifically around dealing with the toxins from the chemotherapy. And because the chemotherapy that a lot of times, a lot of people I know, and so what I was on was called FOLFIRINOX, and it's basically 3 chemotherapies, because they don't have, it's like, just throw the kitchen sink at it, like throw everything at it, and it's toxic and it leaves a lot of side effects. And so I did got it. Then he came to me and he said, look, there's a lot of studies out here on the beneficial impact to cancer and going through treatments of acupuncture. And so I started doing acupuncture every week. I did Reiki. I did all the supplements that I could get my hands on for energy. The second part of, so energy was one, you got to stay in the struggle. And, because your body's
Mitochondrial
under
hair.
attack. Yeah.
Yeah. Was
Hmm.
mitochondrial health within that,
Oh
like
yeah.
anything
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
going to feed the
And
mitochondria was in that
anything. Yeah.
energy?
All of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. All of that. Right. So it's physical energy, spiritual energy, mental energy, like, just all those things, anything that we could put together that would help my body resist the energy. Because, cancer only does 2 things. These defective cells only do 2 things. They're actually not, I gave up, like, like the anger against cancer, those things. These are just cells that have lost their way. Okay, that's all. They only know how to do 2 things: They consume energy and they replicate. They don't realize it's not they're not doing intentionally malicious things. In their world, they think they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. It's just by their replication uncontrolled, they kill you. And so, that was actually one of my things, was to come to terms with that I didn't actually hate the cancer. It's just, we have to part ways. We can't. You don't understand what you're doing to me. I don't really
And
have any animosity against you, but we've got to separate.
I absolutely love what you're saying, because the moment we also give it that kind of energy towards it, and it's that anger, well, that's not helping us either in that process, right? If somebody's going through that, because that is also feeding the cortisol levels. Like, there's just so many. So
I'll,
by releasing that, it completely also shifted your whole way of being by not holding on to that anger. Love.
Well,
And by
you'll notice that I work diligently not to use the word fight when I say cancer.
right.
I work to say struggle against cancer, because
Hmm.
I don't think it's not like a barroom brawl where, somebody has a fit. I don't know. It just, to me, that takes on a different, yeah. I mean, the
It's
cancer is
just
a
a different
part of
energy.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we all have actually defective cells. Our bodies,
Mhm.
usually take care of those things and clean them up. It's one of the reasons why I started doing a lot of fasting.
Just 1 second when you're touching
Yes, I know. I
the
just
micro,
realized I forgot.
yeah, it's okay, it's okay, I'll just go ahead, yeah, when you did a lot of cleansing and
Yeah, well, a lot of
detoxing, mhm,
fasting,
fasting, mhm.
and the oncologists weren't happy about. They're like, "Oh, Andy, you got to put on weight, and you got to, Well, actually, I didn't need to put on weight. I was a kind of a rare circumstance where I never lost weight going through chemotherapy. What kept me from being nauseated and vomiting was I would have to eat. If I could eat, then that, for some reason, it felt like it would kind of, I know this is not medical, but it would kind of soak up the chemotherapy, right? Like, it would help keep it, so just from just sitting in my stomach and my intestines. But so we did a lot of different things. So the first prong of the strategy was energy. Second prong of the strategy was weaken the cancer cells, even if just 1/4 of 1%, but weaken them and attack them based on their need to replicate and their need to consume energy. So the diet part came in. It's like, okay, well, let's reduce the glucose levels as much as possible. And I was insulin resistant, and I worked out a lot. I was larger than I am today. I think I'm like 225 today. I was about 250 pounds. I lifted weights all the time. And I wasn't obese. I was just, carried a lot of muscle. But I still had like high sugar levels. And so we spent a lot of time getting the glucose under control, and then all the supplements, and I do off label medications and on label medications. But all of those, like, if you went to the website and you saw the list of stuff, all of that, almost all of that is directed at making my body an inhospitable place for these defective cells and to weaken them just a little bit. But if I can stack, 1% degradation on 30 different vectors, then I've got a 30% degradation in the cancer cell's ability to consume and replicate. So, one, energy; two, make it an inhospitable place for the cancer cells; and then three, the first two were really to drive the third ones, do the treatments, right? You needed the energy to stay in the treatments because they're difficult. You need to weaken the cancer cells. So the chemotherapy, the immunotherapy, I do a thing called a PARP inhibitor today. Like, all these things, my view was that, I wanted to have the energy to go long term and stay in the struggle. I wanted to weaken the cancer cells so that it would help the more standard of care, or even the trial medications that I ended up on. I wanted to give them a better shot at killing or terminating the cancer cells. And so that became the three-pronged strategy. And I still basically today, every day, implement that same strategy that I started 7 years ago.
That is incredible, and I just am so grateful that you found a physician that had this well-rounded approach, and really, a functional approach to medicine too, because he was really looking at every single aspect, not just one lane.
He's
So
he's one in a million. But you
yes,
do find, I do believe that you know. So a person that I'm associated with at work, wife was diagnosed with a, I don't think it's rare, but an uncommon cancer. And I told him, I said, look, what would I do different? Okay, first I would take a deep breath. Okay, you're going to need a couple weeks, a week or so to sort out the emotion. She's about the same age I am, I think, or was when I was diagnosed, I think, and it's like, okay, so this is gonna set you back mentally. You just need to accept that, but you have time. Take a deep breath. I said, then you start looking for the places around the country that have dedicated practices to this type of cancer. You have people that are knowledgeable. I said, but when you get to those people, the only people who are absolutely 100% in your camp is your wife and you, and maybe a physician if you find one. And I'm blessed that my physician is like, yeah, I mean, it's he takes it very personal. Like we stay in contact all the time. He's like, tell me what's going on. But the point is that, my point to this person was, you don't accept less than a physician. Don't accept less than a physician. Your relationship with your physician, you want somebody that is curious, someone that will tell you, yes, I want you to do all you can to help me do all I can. Right? It's like it's a partnership. And so that's some advice that I would share with others is, when you're diagnosed with a difficult disease, and this applies to a lot of things outside of just cancer. But I would suggest that you take a deep breath and then decide a plan of action, and only include in your plan of action as much as possible physicians. Now I've got doctors that I work with, and not every oncologist, you got to live with what you get. Although my oncologist at the University of Pennsylvania is a true physician, and my general physician is a true physician. I've been blessed to find and be associated with those people. But if I were starting over today and I didn't have one, I would be very selective. I just think there's too many doctors and not enough physicians, and there's too many doctors who walk around telling you that they know everything. And the doctor that tells me he knows everything is the doctor I will not do business with. Right? Yeah.
yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing all that journey. Hi, I just had to come on and just kind of interrupt right now this episode that you're hearing. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful that you guys are listening to this conversation. And every single time I hear a guest, there's something new that I learn and something else that ends up showing up within me that I realize I still have to work on. And if by chance, as you're listening to this conversation, you're feeling the same, that there's parts of you that are being stirred up, and you are navigating a life transition right now that feels just heavy and stressful and just layered with grief, I want you to know that you do not have to do it alone. I invite you to connect with me for a free 15-minute discovery call, and we'll explore what's coming up for you and see if working together feels like the right fit. Just check the show notes below for my email and reach out for details. I'd really love to support you in integrating these transitions with more ease and clarity. Can't wait to hear back from you. Okay, let's keep on listening to the episode. And so here you are, 2 years in to your cancer treatment, and you then are faced with this other major aspect of grief, because you already had to also be in the mental state to be able to struggle with the cancer and treat it. And then your youngest son, well, how old was he, and what was your son's name, if you don't mind to share?
No, his name is Heston Walker Campbell. He was 18 years old. He was about to turn 19. As a matter of fact, yesterday, the date of this recording, yesterday was his birthday.
Right now we're recording on September 10th, which is known to be Suicide Awareness Month. And so September 9th was his birthday.
Yeah. And I still speak about him in present tense. I
Yes.
mean, we have 4 children.
Yes,
He is
absolutely.
one of our four children. This is his birthday. That is his name. I mean, it's so yeah. It was that was an unimaginably difficult time. It still is. My wife just had a very difficult week coming up on his birthday this year. Yes, last year it was difficult, but not as difficult as this year. You never know when it's going to show up or how it's going to show up, but it's um, yeah. I think my wife went through after my son's suicide. She went into a very, they were very close. He was the youngest. She had the most time to spend with him. She had wanted to have, uh, when we had the two girls first, and then we had a boy. She was like, I want another boy. That's what I want. So we'll have two and two, and we got another boy, and then so they were extremely close. And he had promised her. We had dealt with this for 9 years. He told us when he was 9 years old that he didn't understand why people didn't just end their lives because he was extremely logical, way older than his years. And so, but he had promised his mother that he would never take a final act without giving her a chance to talk him out of it. That he would sit down with her and talk to her. Um, but in this case, he didn't, and so there was a lot. I mean, she dealt with a lot, and she came to a place, a very dark, desperate place. And I just happened to call her one day and say, I don't have a good feeling about where you are right now. And she didn't say it directly, but I knew that she was seriously considering ending her own life. Like the pain of losing her son was just too much. And we talked, and I got our physician on the phone who had been close to my son and, saw him, took a direct interest. And he was devastated when he took his own life. He had seen him in the office just 10 days before. But people who are in that mental state don't tell you what's really going on. They tell you what they want you to know.
Yeah.
And my wife just, but we were able to pull her back from the edge. So the insights that I have into what someone's thinking at that moment really come from her experiences and explaining to me what she thinks Heston was seeing at that moment.
Wow. Yeah, I just saw today one of my guests, Reshma. Her husband died by suicide, and this aspect of sometimes feeling like we could have prevented it. It really is. It really is not like when someone that has already made that decision is there. There really is not much anyone can do around to do right to stop. So like I don't know, it's like the guilt is going to be there for everyone around because it's normal to feel that in your grief, but the reality is there's really little you can do to prevent someone that's already has their mind set on doing it.
Now, I would say there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
And I struggled with that. And I had another just wonderful human being. We had two therapists that were right in the beginning that were just wonderful people. One was, a child loss grief person. And we met with her for a few months after this happened. And she got us through that. And then, of course, you're dealing with the other three children, the remaining children, and all that they're dealing with, and which was unimaginably difficult for them. But also, just watching as a parent, there's nothing you can do about it. Like this is just the way things will be. And but the therapist who ended up helping me through EMDR told me at one point, I was telling her, if only I had known this information sooner, if only I had done this, if only I had done this other thing. And she asked me, she said, well, so why do you think this is not the best outcome of a very bad outcome? Why do you think that it would be better? And I said, well, if I had known this and if I had done this and she said, well, all those things, he would have had to do something different, right? And I said, well, yeah, but she goes, Andy, you don't understand. you have zero control. And and had you done anything different, it could have been worse. And I said, well, what could be worse than this? And she goes, well, let's see, he's 18. He was depressed. He was obviously angry enough that he took his own life. What if he had taken somebody else with him? What if he had, what if he had been unsuccessful and was just in a vegetative state for the rest of his life? What if, and she went through, and I was like, okay, you can stop. You can stop. And she's like, all I'm working to communicate to you is that you have no idea what all the permutations of outcomes could possibly be. You just know the outcome that you have, and you think you had some control over this outcome. And through those conversations and a lot of work, I came to the place of realizing that I had not, I really felt like my wife, Heston's mother, and I had kept him alive. And I came to a place of realizing that was all a facade. We had never kept him alive. Nothing we did kept him alive. He was making a choice every day not to kill himself. And somehow in that small shift of thinking, the burden went from us to him. And so on that day, he decided not to stay alive. And if that's the case, if that was his decision, then there is nothing I could have done. As a matter of fact, for 9 years, I had never done anything to keep him alive. Every day, because every day, every moment of every day, he had the means to end his life. And he was the one who wasn't ending his life. Now, maybe I made, I could give the appearance to him that things would get better, or we would have arguments and discussions, and I would grasp on and hold on as hard as I could. And we had some very difficult times. I had to have him committed for 3 days one time because we were concerned that he was going to hurt himself. But at the end of it all, I came to realize that I had never done anything to keep him alive. I may have just kind of contributed to an environment where that day he decided not to kill himself. And I don't know if that makes sense, but to me, the burden of staying alive was flipped onto him. And I would just say
I
to other
was just
parents,
saying that.
yeah, you have never kept your child alive. You haven't. They have made a decision not to take their own life, not to end it.
I got chills when you said that basically for all those 9 years that he had been already struggling and thinking of that he was making that choice not to. I got chills thinking of how much energy that must have taken from this child to withhold these desires, right? Like how exhausted he must have been every day that he actually was able to withhold from not taking that urge, right? Like and every single
It does, yeah. No, you start from that perspective, from that point of
yes.
view. Then I think now my wife is not here. Okay,
Yep. This is
4
your perspective.
years. I think this would be his 5th birthday. We just had his. He died in early June on the 7th of June. So we've had 4 suicide anniversaries. This is his 5th birthday. She's not really yet in a forgiving place. Okay, so as one can imagine, with a mother, she still holds some
No, and
animosity
everybody's journey,
for
yeah,
having
but
primarily
and
broken
everybody's
his
journey is
trust.
different.
And yeah, yeah. For me, he and I have had a number of conversations. At least I have a conversation, and I came to the place where I was like, I can't. I'm going to forgive you for what you've done. I can't hold this against you. And one of the factors in that was because I honestly have no idea how exhausted he must have been from deciding every day not to take his own life. And just, from his point of view. Now, were there a number of things that he could have done differently? 100%. Were there a number of relationships he could have built? Was there a way that he could have decided? But we gave him all those opportunities. See, that's where, like as a parent, I'm like, look, I gave you access to a therapist, psychiatrist, supplements, Medicaid. Like at some point, he had to decide. And, it's funny. One of the things we knew that a number of members of our family have a genetic mutation where we don't process um, B vitamins, and ultimately we don't process
Methylated,
methylfolation.
methylated.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah. And so it affects, neurotransmitters and that kind of stuff. And he came to us about 2 weeks before he took his life and was like, "Hey, I really need to get back on these supplements. I feel like I need to get back on it." I think at that point, that was too late. Like he had made too many other decisions. And so a lot of the therapies that you would use take time. And then for whatever reason, that day, something had happened through where he was working, through just his daily life with us, but something happened that would make no sense to us, right? Like it would be like, why would that be true? But at some point, he came to a place where he's like, I'm exhausted. I'm done with this. And so, yeah, I think we like to believe that as parents, somehow we have a level of control, but we don't have a level of control. Even as a child, the only level of control we have is some guidance, but they make a choice as to whether or not to listen to us. They make a choice as to not run out in the street in front of cars because we tell them don't do that, or, do this, not that. They're making a choice. Every day they make choices to pay attention to us, to listen to us, to follow guidance. Well, this is no different. At least that's the point. That's the place I came to.
Well,
We
it's
gave him
really
guidance and
similar.
opportunity, and he made a different decision.
Well, it's similar to what you were even just saying before. You can have a physician, and a physician can tell the patient everything, but the patient has to then take take that and do it, right? With here as well. It's like if you already know that this is how much it's going to take for you to be able to survive pancreatic cancer, like in your case, and you're taking all that for someone that already knows that they have depression and so forth, if they really want to live, they would then do all of the things all the time, not just the day you like when my kids just ask me for the vitamin C the day they get the cold or the
Yeah.
zinc or
Right.
whatever. I'm like,
Exactly. Yeah.
okay, well, you
Yeah.
guys,
Yeah.
it's not gonna. You
It
want
don't
to
work
do
that way.
things that are
Yeah.
right, and in our life, we have to look at it that way. We're we have to do things every day that are just um how do you call it, little by little compile to the whole, not just well all of a sudden. Wow. Well,
Yeah. Well,
thank
look, I,
you.
I learned that lesson. So I rode a motorcycle, and in the state I live in, helmets are not required. And but I always, always wore a helmet. And I one day I crashed. It was the last time I rode because my wife was like, "We have 4 small children. You'll never get on a motorcycle again as long as you have to provide, and we need your life insurance." And this was before I got diagnosed with cancer. But what I realized in that moment, so when the ambulance came, and I had slid across like 3 lanes of traffic. Won't get into the whole description, but the top of my helmet was basically gone. I wore a set of goggles. The goggles had basically gone, but my head and face were intact. I had some other injuries. And when I got in the ambulance, uh, the tech said, "Man, if you hadn't had a helmet, you'd be at the 7th floor of the medical university." And that's where they said, like the severe head traumas. It's like you'd be on the 7th floor right now. And I thought in that moment, and it applies, I think, across so many parts, but whether it's personal relationships, how you take care of your health, mental health, business, this kind of what I think is kind of a true visualization of this came to me, which was you have to put your helmet on before you need it. Because when you need it, there's no time to put it on. And I think what a lot of us do is we wait until there is a crash, but you can't put your helmet on. Then it's too late. So yes, it's uncomfortable. No, you may not feel metaphorically the breeze in your hair, and you may not be enjoying the sun on your face. But when you need it, it has to be there before you need it. And I think that's the same thing I would say about these things around mental health. You have to do these things before you need them. because when you need them, it's too late. My wife described it as her experience was she was standing on the edge of a dark tunnel, and that dark tunnel was very seductive. It spoke to her in a language that, and in a tone of voice that, was all comforting. Life will be better. All the pain will be gone. And, she said it drew her toward this dark tunnel. And she said, I realized that Heston, for all these years, had one foot in the tunnel and one foot out. And every day the struggle was, it was being seductive and saying, but Heston, oh, this pain will go away. They'll be fine. Everybody will be better off without you. She said it spoke to me. It was like I was having this conversation with this dark thing, but it wasn't a fearful dark thing. It was seductive. It presented itself as the answer to all my questions. And I would say, well, what about your other three remaining children? What about me? What about your friends? And she said, in that moment, it's not telling you to think about all these other things. It's telling you everyone will be fine. Everyone will be fine. And the pain will go away. And what I realized, I think, what I realized in that moment was, for the person who takes their life, the pain ends for them. But the pain doesn't actually go with them. The pain stays right here with the rest of us. And the pain, it is like a cancer. That's why I think you kind of have to fight suicide the same way that you would struggle against cancer, right? You have to struggle against suicide the same way you struggle against cancer. And because that pain, once it is no longer attached to that person, and even though we were all in a painful situation being, with his struggle, once it detaches, he detaches from that pain, then that pain is free to go wherever it wants to go. And like a cancer, it will metastasize onto the people who loved him. And then it will grow, and it will get to the people who just knew him. And then eventually it will spread out to people who never knew him, but they will hear the story, or there will be something missing in the universe. And in that moment, that dark force is telling you, I think, that everything will be okay. Everything will be better. I think people who, I've heard stories of, and I know personally people who got their diagnosis for cancer and they put a little effort in, and then they're like, you know what? I'm not going to win this battle. I don't want to put up all this effort and then die anyway. And everybody will be better off without me. You can just go on and marry another. You'll get another wife. The children will have another mother. All that's a lie. That's just that dark force. The pain of whatever you're going through does not go with you when you die. It detaches from you. You have detached from it. And so now it's free to go wherever it needs to go. I think the better thing is to stay here, confront the pain, look, we're all going to die. The number one cause of death in the entire history of humanity is not cancer, it's not heart disease, it's birth. Birth is the number one cause of death. We're all going to die. Now it's a matter of how we die, because that matters to future generations. That's what teaches them how to live. I know that from my own mother's experience. And I believe I've taught my children and people around me, die a certain way. If you haven't read the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, it is one of my absolute favorites, although it's a very difficult read, especially the first half, but it is one of my absolute favorites. And so we're all going to die. So we should live and die with meaning, because that matters to future generations. And why not struggle to stay alive with every ounce of our being until our body can no longer support this soul that lives inside of us? Why not do that? Because it's not like if you put the effort in, it's like a failure. You're going to die. It's just a matter of timing now. So put the effort in, stay in the game, and put all you have of your being into delaying the inevitable, because that's all we're doing, delaying the inevitable as long as possible. I don't understand. It's hard for me to, I know I've had moments where it's just not worth it. Like, I just don't think I can keep going. Like, it's just too hard. My body's giving way. I'm going to die. And I had a moment like that. Won't have time today to talk about it, but I had a moment like that. And then my wife had to step in, and she's like, no, this is where we're going. And she kind of carried me in that moment to the next phase when I had to pick the ball up again and own the responsibility. But why not? Yeah, I mean, I guess the inverse of that is why even struggle, which was Heston's point of view. Why even struggle if you're going to die? And my take on it is no one else in the universe can replace you.
Yeah.
No one can replace you. There will be, if I die, even if my wife found a second husband, he will not be me. My
Mhm.
children will not have me. My friends will not have me. My place in the universe, me is just a single thread in the fabric of the universe. I am here for some reason, which is still not tremendously clear to me. And I don't know why I'm alive versus your mother has passed away. I have no clarity on that. And I'm not like, that's why I don't go around telling people do these things. And I don't know. Right. But every human is an irreplaceable thread in the fabric of the universe. So how you live knowing that we're all going to die, like it is supremely important to all the humans that come after us that they have examples and aspirational models to follow. And if you quit, you're leaving that behind. That's
Mhm.
just the way I look at it. You're just leaving behind the way to deal with these problems is you quit. To me, that's what
It's your
suicide is.
you're and in that moment too, and whether it's that or giving up on trying to be healthier in our day to day, the choices that we make day to day, it's as if we're not only giving up on ourselves, we're giving up on everybody else that loves us if we don't even take care of ourselves. I remember for me, like when I started to learn more about health and wellness and really take care of myself, it was not for me. It was really well, partly, but it was really thinking of my children. I'm like, I don't want my children to feel that I'm a burden as I start aging and not being the best version of myself and my health. If I could have done something to take care of this body while I'm here,
And that's
right?
the example you set to them when
Exactly
they
how
have
they do.
children and they reach your age and they do, then they will. My wife has a saying. I love this thing. I don't know where she came up with it or where she heard it, but she says it all the time. She says, I would rather be the oldest person in the gym than the youngest person at the nursing home. And,
Love
so
that.
what does it take to do that? Like
Mm,
and so, yeah, I think, look, I think there's two elements to it, to this view. Uh, one is you're leaving a legacy. Choose your legacy. My son left a legacy of when you get too exhausted in your own life, avoid the decisions, and then honestly just avoid all the ramifications of your suicide, because that's what he's saying. He's avoided all the ramifications of the suicide. We're all left with all the ramifications of the suicide, and I don't think, like, I've talked to some people who consider suicide, and they're like, yeah, part of it was I wanted these people to feel the loss. I would, like, I wanted to, kind of. It's like, yeah, they're not responsible for you staying alive or ending your life. You're responsible for that. You're making a choice to stay alive. And I think the second part is too many people have lost the belief that we are divinely created and no one can replace us. To me, it's a big like ego booster when you're dealing with low self-esteem, and you look at some of the things I went through as a child, and I dealt with low self-esteem for a long time. But at some point, if you can gather and then hold on to what I believe to be the truth, that no one can replace you. You're it. Like, there's not like, oh, if I'm not here, no, that's not how it works. Will the machine keep running? Yeah. The earth will keep spinning. Yes. The population will do what it's going to do. Yes. But no one can replace you. And so those two things are big guideposts for me.
yeah.
Uh,
We
I,
all
I
have
believe
unique
I can.
fingerprints for
Yes.
we all have unique fingerprints for a reason, right? We are
Yeah.
very unique. Andy, you've shared so much and I love it. It's like, yes, we could have gone probably just one podcast on each of these topics, and because we haven't even touched on your book. So please let's talk a little bit about your book before we close off. Tell people first off, when did you start writing it? And let's go over it. It's overcoming life's toughest setbacks, and it's 15 core beliefs. So tell us when you started writing it and how this process has been for you of writing and now sharing your own
So
life's
I'm a
journey.
visual person. I some people I understand hear words and they actually hear words. When I hear words, I see pictures. And so to remember a painting, I give it kind of a name or kind of a little cliche, something that I can remember that by because it reminds me of the picture that I've seen. And so over the years, I started writing down these little cliches that would little phrases that would remind me of things that I believe I've observed. And over time, the things that came to me, and maybe it's just my circumstances in life, were almost always around how to survive, how to get through, how not to quit. And so over time, I collected these 15 phrases that I came to think of as my core beliefs. They're like the things that I hold on to. They're my helmet before the crash. And And then going through the cancer and the loss of my son, my physician was like, "Hey, you really need to write a book." And I was like, "I don't want to write a book. What would I write a book about?" He said, "Well, you survived cancer." And I was like, "I don't want to write a book about cancer." He goes, "Well, you dealt with your son's loss, and the impact to your family, and you're still standing up." And I was like, I don't want to write a book about suicide." But then one day, and I don't know why, one day I looked at this because I keep the 15 core beliefs like on this piece of paper just to kind of refer to them occasionally. And I decided just in Word, I took and I said, I'm just going to write like a little bit about each one. And so I wrote a little bit about each one. And then then I go back to it and be like, I should write a little bit more. And the next thing I knew, um, I'm not a writer, but I'd put together, something that I then hired an editor, and the editor changed the pricing on me because she gave me a price before she saw the work I'd done, and then she was like, "It's going to cost you a little more to fix this and clean it up." And so eventually this book came out, and it's not about any one thing. The 15 core beliefs are the things to me that long term they help guide. They're aspirational, but for me when I have had to go from being completely devastated to that time when I could kind of get back on my feet and start slowly making progress again. These beliefs are like that rope bridge between those two places across that deep valley, right? And so you can find the book on my website, askandycampbell.com. Find stuff about my cancer journey there and other things, books that I read, supplements I take, that kind of stuff. But the book is there and it's on Amazon also.
That's awesome. Yes, there's a lot of resources on your website. So again, askandycampbell.com. And you can see, yeah, like you have your resources, your own like health journey too, and everything on there too. And then the book and if you want to just read the 15 core beliefs, you could see them right there and then just buy the book. And if this interview was not a hint that you should read the book with everything that just your own life as how you've lived through all these things and still held your head high is very inspirational. Thank you, Andy. Andy, I always want to make sure that guests get to share something that if by chance I did not get to ask, or if you want to just make sure to leave some last words with our guests before we close off.
Yeah, I was asked one time, what during my life's journey am I most proud of? And I say what I'm about to say in hopes that someone will hear it and will use this perspective to encourage them to keep struggling against whatever their struggle is. And this is what I'm most proud of. Ultimately, I did not take out of the Creator's hands his ability to move the universe in my favor. Now, not everybody makes it in every situation. I mean, Viktor Frankl talks about out of 28 people that went into the camps, only 1 in 28 came out alive. But how you go into these situations and how you live through them is more important than whether you're the 1 in 27 or you're not. And so I would just encourage people, no matter where you're at in the process, no matter how bad it is or your perception of it is, do not take out of the Creator's hands the ability to move the universe in your favor.
I love that. Thank you, Andy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you again so much for choosing to listen today. I hope that you can take away a few nuggets from today's episode that can bring you comfort in your times of grief. If so, it would mean so much to me if you would rate and comment on this episode. And if you feel inspired in some way to share it with someone who may need to hear this, please do so. Also, if you or someone you know has a story of grief and gratitude that should be shared so that others can be inspired as well, please reach out to me. And thanks once again for tuning in to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. Have a beautiful day.